immigration has dropped dramatically. Illegal immigration has dropped Obamacare is an abject failure. Jobs here. And I don't think anybody in the room would disagree. Jobs in San Cruz Valley are a really good thing. Yeah! Best thing. Can you talk to us about what you're doing with regard... Can you talk to us about what you're doing on the Armed Services Committee and other portions of the government, especially in Congress, about bringing jobs to San Cruz Valley that have a set follow-up? Sure.
Okay. So I do sit on armed services, I do sit on science, space, and technology, and small business. The effects of a strong economy and the effects of bringing jobs into an area, I think we could all agree, are probably the best thing that government can do. No. Okay, most of us can. But, so what we've tried to do is we've sat down with small business and we've looked at maybe some of the regulatory problems that are happening. I think you're going to see that this next week with the Financial Choice Act. And if you haven't read that, some of you probably haven't, read it. Yes. Every word. Yes, sir, I answered your question. Every word. And I know you didn't, but I did. I know you didn't. It's okay. But, so, the fact of the matter is, to bring jobs to an area or to bring jobs to a country, you have to get out of the way of some of the financial problems that are happening. One of the things that's happening in the Financial Choice Act is the fiduciary rule. If anybody knows this, you do. Okay, good. The fiduciary rule is something that was put in about 6 months ago, and it said financial advisors can now not give advice without charging for it. So if you walk in and you're asking for financial advice, you will be charged from day one. That's the first. I'll go through 10 of these if you'd like, but since everybody keeps interrupting, I'll just keep going. Now, understand that if you're going to bring jobs to an area, you've got to look at the area. This area, a lot of it is aerospace. So we work directly with the aerospace companies. We work directly with what's impacting them. That's why I wrote the $450 tax credit when I was in the Senate to bring the B-21 bomber to Southern California. We're going to continue to work with those companies to find out how we can bring more of that here. That's 6,500 jobs. 6,500 jobs in Southern California. And I'll keep going with this as we answer more questions. No, we'll come back. We'll keep going. Okay. Yes, ma'am, right there.
Hi. Well, it's nice to see you. I haven't been able to make it to any of your other town halls because, can't always drive that far or wait that long in line. I'm a disabled vet, so I just...
Thank you.
I'm going to ask you questions that have nothing to do with Russia, healthcare, or Paris. So you'll enjoy those. But what I did want to ask you about is back in March, when you voted to repeal the FCC privacy rules, allowing our internet service providers to sell our personal information without our consent, or even letting us know that they're taking the practice.
That's a great question.
But I just was curious, was there somebody in our district or even in the whole country, Republican, Democrat, vegetarian, anybody who wanted this to happen?
Okay. So if you read the bill, it goes back to the FCC to make a decision on what happens with not just ISPs, but what happens with your internet engines. So right now, Google sells your information every second, every day, every time you go on Google, they collect information and they sell it. Everyone. All of the internet engines do that. Everyone. But what this regulation by the Obama administration, what they said was, we're going to stop this group from doing it, but this group can do it. And so the bill came forward and we said, let's make it clear across the board. If it's ISPs, if it's search engines, if it even looks at private, then let's have the FCC give us a clarification on all the way across the board. The regulation from the last administration only picked out one group. And they said, this group cannot do it. But this group can. Google does it every second of every day. You do. You have a choice. But understand, if the FCC can go back and...
The utilities are so heavily regulated that we don't get to choose. When you actually let the service providers do it, now they're just joining...
But what I'm saying is, if the internet service provider cannot do it, and they were doing it, and that's... I'm trying to answer the lady's question. If the internet service providers cannot do it, but this group can, whether you use Google, Yahoo, or whatever, they're doing it every second of every day. So people would... I've explained, I've answered. Okay, but the FCC has to do that. That's why we sent it back and we said, we want clarification across the board, not just on ISPs, but on the internet providers too, on the internet service engines too. Okay, so you're saying, but you're okay with them selling your information every second, every day. You're okay with that. You're okay, right? Wait, you just said you're okay with that, man. Okay, but then you would vote for this bill. You would send it back to the FCC with clarification saying, please, look at both of these sections. Don't just look at one and say, no, you can't do it. Please look at both. That's what the bill said. The bill said, FCC, please give us clarification across the board and make a decision across the board. That's what it said. Okay, but you read the bill, right? Or did you read something on Facebook?
Your job is to read the bill. Our job is to have you explain it to us.
I just did. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
As a constituent of the 25th District of California, I'd like to ask you, how did you, by what margin did you win the election in November?
6.7.
I'd also like to ask, there's a couple of things I'd like to ask. Number one, I'm sorry, I'm not quick enough because I'm so nervous.
Okay.
This is my first town hall where I get an opportunity to ask a question. And quite honestly, I've been to all the town halls, but this is my first one where I'm going to ask a question. So I will stand up here and I will say that as a constituent of the 25th District, I want to commend you for your stand for life.
Oh.
I want to commend you. I want to commend you for your ability to function in a polarized environment politically. And I also want to ask you, given that there are a lot of us in the 25th District which you won by 6.7 percentage points. We care about the future of agencies such as Planned Parenthood. We care about defunding Planned Parenthood. For agencies such as Planned Parenthood, which many of us do in fact oppose federal funding for. I'd also like to know, as an individual who went to Planned Parenthood my first year of college, I can tell you I did receive services from Planned Parenthood. And I can stand here today and say I will vote for every candidate that stands up for life and who would stand up to defund Planned Parenthood. Folks that will stand with me in favor of saving life. And I do appreciate your courage. Thank you.
Thank you. I think everybody in the room knows that I'm pro-life. I think that everybody in the room knows. If you didn't, then you don't own a TV because there were 600 commercials that ran against me last time on pro-life. So I continue to be pro-life. The initial question, I think Planned Parenthood will continue to go on, and Planned Parenthood will continue to be a service out there. They will. So whether they have funding from the government or not, they raised $840 million last year. So they are going to keep on. But I have been pro-life all my life, and I continue. Okay.
Hello, Congressman Lake. I wanted to thank you for holding this town hall today, and I imagine, as much as I might disagree with you on certain things, I still am grateful that you're holding this town hall, and it can't be easy to come out here when people are yelling at you. My 5-year-old had a few developmental delays. He received classes to help with his speech and his occupational therapy. He starts kindergarten in the fall, and he'll continue to receive occupational therapy once a week in the classroom through special education, which is funded by Medicaid.
Okay.
I understand that the Trump care bill wants to cut Medicaid, which does directly fund such programs as special education in schools.
This is your son, correct, ma'am?
This is my son.
Okay.
I'm wondering, why would you vote on a bill that would hurt the families
Your
and
son will
children of
continue
your
to
own
be on
district?
Medicaid. Okay.
It's okay. Yep.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
That's okay.
No, your son would continue to be on Medicaid. That wouldn't be changed under ACA or AHCA. Continue to be on Medicaid. Yes. So,
What about the other children whose funding will be cut, though? My son's gotten past the worst of it, and he was helped. He can mainstream with the other kids now. But I'm worried about the other families who, are going to be born this year.
I understand under AHCA, and that wouldn't be kicked off Medicaid. Your son would stay on Medicaid. Thank you. Yes, sir.
I wanted to thank you for holding this town hall, because by reaching out to your community, you're lessening the rift that's formed between the American people and elected officials. I'd like to ask you about what you feel about another rift that is formed between the American people, and that's the rift that's formed between us and the brave men and women of law enforcement. And
the
the animosity on both sides of the rift has grown to start to dehumanize members of both camps in the eyes of the others. And what would you do to, what bills would you seek to be established that would lessen that rift and unite our men and women of law enforcement with their local communities?
Good question. So I think over the last 5, 8 years, 10 years or so, there's been definite incidents that have changed the way we think. I can tell you my third day on LAPD was Rodney King. So I was in the neighboring division when that happened. I wasn't at that incident, but so my whole career was after that had happened. These things happen in our country, and they do start to build a rift, maybe in that community. We've seen several of them over the last, when I say several of them, but we've seen many of them over the last 5, 10 years that, and I think the advent of social media has made it easier for us to see things and know something has happened very quickly. When I was growing up, if something happened, you had to wait until the 11 o'clock news or read it in the paper the next day. Now my sons can see it on YouTube within 5 minutes. So I think that that has changed the way that the law enforcement community and the community can be seen, because it can be seen so quickly. But the law enforcement community first does a very tough job. They protect me and my family every day. I thank the good Lord for it. And I say this with experience. It is a very, very difficult job. You're trying to deal with people maybe at one of the worst times of their life, or maybe at a time where a loved one is going to see something, or maybe they've just come out of a very traumatic event and the police have to show up and kind of work through this problem. So a lot of what police work is just interaction with you and me. And but I would say on a daily basis that 99,999 out of 100,000, the law enforcement community goes out and does a very, very difficult job in very trying circumstances and does it perfectly.
Yeah!
Yes, sir.
Congressman Knight, my name is Pauline Washta, and
Yes, sir.
I have a mental health issue. Specifically, I've got 2. So my mother-in-law was recently diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease, and she has stayed in nursing care, which is extremely expensive. One of my concerns there is taking a look at Trump's budget, which would cut or eliminate the deduction for medical expenses. That's effectively a $10,000 per year tax increase on my family. The other mental health issue I've got is my little sister who has paranoid schizophrenia. For the longest time, she was on the waiting list for the high-risk pool. She never made it on there, you know. And what I'm seeing now with the Trump care bill, the Ryan care bill, whatever you want to call it, is elimination of mental health as an essential health benefit. I'm just deeply concerned that the way this administration is going, the way this Congress is going, would severely impact people like my mother-in-law, people like my sister, and therefore people like myself. What are you doing to stand up for people like my family?
Yes, sir. I just need more clarification because the first question was on the budget that was released from the president, and part of that is wrapped into AHCA, correct?
It is.
Or separate?
Well, they're 2 separate questions. Yeah, so tax
So let's take the budget first. The president puts out a budget every year. It's part of the Budget Control Act of 1974, and that's kind of when we got a presidential budget. But understand, Congress builds the budget. Congress writes the checks, we do the money stuff, we do all of that. We do the 12 appropriations bills, hopefully, and build a budget. Because the president says he's going to cut this, or do this, or take away the National Endowment of the Arts, or something like that, doesn't mean that's what's going to happen. It is, and I'll get you a follow-up here, it just means that that is the presidential budget where he wants this to go. So remember, the budget is built out of Congress. We build this budget. We go through our appropriations process. We're doing that right now in June. I will be going into the NDAA, National Defense Authorization Act, which is kind of part of the appropriations that I'm involved in, because that's the military. And we build the budget off that. So some of everything that you've seen in the presidential budget might not happen. We've got to build our budget first. And sir, I know you've got a follow-up.
Yeah, so how specifically are you going to vote for this? You know, when you vote to eliminate the medical expense deduction, what's your position?
So on the budget from the president? Okay, so let's understand, when this comes back from the Senate, if it does come back from the Senate, if it doesn't, we have ACA for the next 4 years. It's then got to be worked together before anything goes to the president. So that's number one. Secondly, I think I'm going to try and be as patient with the question, but, you know, let's have a little bit of decorum here. Or no. Or no. Okay. 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 You're right. You're right. Okay. Next question. Yes, sir. Next question.
Is this a room full of children?
Okay. Joshua Burry. Yes. Right here. Okay.
Hi, my name is Erin Miller, and I'm actually just going to speak back to a comment you made earlier about the fiduciary rule, which wasn't the question that had been asked of you, but something you wanted to speak about. And you said, you've read the rule, you know, people here haven't, so let me tell you what it's about.
Okay.
And so just as an FYI, I have an MBA from UCLA, and I'm the CFO of a company that works with kids with learning disabilities. I am familiar with that. And what you said that it's about is an egregious misrepresentation. The express purpose that financial advisors have to work in the interest of the people they represent, not the products they are selling. So that's what that rule is about. And you're sitting up there and saying to the people who haven't read it, no, it means something else, I think really represents what you are about.
Is it hard to be a Kenyan? Just a little. All right, you'll be okay.
Yeah, I think my demographic is a little underrepresented here, so I'm going to ask something that's more pertinent to my life. It's actually regarding the Trump proposed, I'm sorry, I'm losing the word, budget, the proposed budget, right? Sorry. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that reduces a few $1 billion of Department of Education spending, correct?
Yes, it does.
Okay, so in what manner do you expect that plan to provide net benefits for my generation?
education cuts, because there are many education cuts. I absolutely can answer it. Absolutely can. Okay. So, but Ryan asked about a couple billion. I want to give him the right number. Is that okay? Okay, there we go. So 2.4 billion for grants for teacher training.
We don't need that.
Okay. I don't know how to take that from you. Okay. 1.2 billion in funding for summer and after school programs. These are cuts. Hang on, Ryan, we'll get to you. 200 million in cuts to federal programs which benefit low-income, first-generation, disabled, not cut Pell Grants, not cut Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. So I'm just giving you kind of the run of what it means. Not cut Head Start, and then other things, but I don't believe in those cuts. I don't. Education is a part of... Education is a part of the economy, right? An educated workforce definitely helps the economy. They fill positions that maybe we don't have to get visas from other countries for people to come in and take those jobs. I'd rather you go to college and get that education, or go to trade school, or go in the military, or whatever you want to do. But that education is going to get you to that job, correct? So I don't support those cuts. Okay, we'll get over to this side. Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Knight, contrary to the death spiral slogan that its detractors are singing in chorus, the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act did this country a great deal more good than the problems it may have presented. Would have been much better served by congressional efforts to improve and enhance it. Instead of ripping it away and putting us back into the oppressive era of the private insurance industry practices, they called for intervention that got us this legislation. I am 63 years old. I am a productive member of this district. I am a highly educated instructor of this district's college students, such as Ryan Hudak, at colleges in this district. My employer has followed a national model of hiring up to 75% of its faculty as part-timers so that they can avoid giving us benefits. I have sat across the bargaining table from a representative of that employer who looked me in the eye and said, "We are not giving you a path to health care because we don't have to." My husband is 76 years old. He is a productive member of this district. He works full-time at a highly stressful job to get employer-provided benefits so that we are protected from medical catastrophes or the possibility of medically induced bankruptcy. You worked on legislation and then voted for it to take that protection away from us. His employer-provided protection will vanish under the corporate profit instead of patient protection and Unaffordable Health Care Act. My husband has a very well-managed atrial fibrillation. It's managed with inexpensive medication. He has sleep apnea. He uses a CPAP machine. But pre-existing condition, no insurance for him. I have a small ulcer at present. I was once diagnosed with a mild respiratory obstruction. I had a C-section 32 years ago. Oh, pre-existing condition. Anybody in this room who thinks this is hyperbole needs to think back or study back to the increasingly draconian decisions that were being made by private insurers when this legislation became necessary. Should my husband retire? A move that is nigh impossible because of the abuses of the financial industries, and it appears with your voting record that you are making the implosion likely again, says certain analysts. The Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act was our hope for protection for our senior years, indeed for the rest of our lives. My question to you is why you would deliberately take that protection away from potential 15% of your adult constituents in your district. I am not some undeserving ne'er-do-well leeching off society in your district. Neither is my husband, and neither are the 15% of adult constituents, Republicans, Democrats, conservatives, progressives, liberals, independents, or apolitical people whom your legislation and your vote for it slapped in the face. Two questions for this. Why did you deliberately act to do us substantial and potentially devastating harm? And what do you see for us in your district in future if health care becomes unaffordable for us? And please address the fact that our money also comes away from the local economy when we have to put every cent back into private insurance's profit coffers.
So, Dr. Video in that area next. Yes, ma'am. I did. So, okay, well, I'm not going to ask too. Sure, absolutely. Go ahead. Wait for the microphone. Absolutely.
To come back to this high school after 4 years, actually 5 years. I promised myself I would never come back here because I was raped inside of this school. I understand that it is not exactly rape or sexual assault that becomes a pre-existing condition, but it becomes the symptoms. I have 3 mental illnesses now because of what I had to suffer, but my rapist, if he were to have erectile dysfunction, can be covered. I will have to pay more, or I will not be covered. Why did you vote in favor of AHCA when it harms people like me?
I think there's a definite disagreement between this crowd and me about where ACA was going and where AHCA will be going. I agree with that. I think that from everyone that I've talked to in these town halls, they all say there is problems with the ACA. Even the people that love ACA, they say there are problems. And you're nodding your head. Some people are not. A lot of people are not. You are. And I'm answering yours. So, if there is going to be a sustainable, affordable, accessible program, and we know that ACA will not be in 4 years, then do you want us to change it? And understand, this is a federal program. This is not a California program. This is a federal program. So, okay, next. Go ahead.
get to the ladies' question.
Okay, sir, you can yell as much as you want. I'm trying to talk to her. I can't talk over everyone.
Congressman Knight, my name's Brian Rankin, and I'm a fellow combat veteran. Well, you didn't go into combat.
I did not go into combat. Thank you.
So clearly, you know, you can see the disconnect here between the people and you and the way that you vote. Recently, and you know, I think I have a clear idea of how, you know, this district wants you to vote. But on the 24th of May of 2017, you voted on HR 953, which is the Reducing Regulatory Burdens Act of 2017. What does that bill do? That authorizes pesticides to be sprayed near rivers and lakes without a permit. And obviously, on the 4th of May of 2017, we had the AHCA. On the 2nd of May, we had the Working Families Flexibility Act, which authorizes employers to offer compensatory time off in place of overtime pay. Why not just pay people?
All right, I see something. We'll take that, but I understand.
Under the Veterans Second Amendment Protection Act, it authorizes the sale of firearms and ammunition to any veteran deemed mentally incompetent under subsection D, Chapter 4 of Section 922, Title 18. That's also the possession of firearms and ammo. You know, having been in combat, I can tell you that, you know, people experience things. People go through things that disturb them to their core. My battle buddies who are sick and ill, you know, I worked at Walter Reed and I've dealt with mental illness patients. They shouldn't have guns, sir. My battle buddies who are sick like that should not have weapons. Right? There's another one. HR 26, Regulations from the Executive and Need of Security Act, all right, of 2017, where it states all major rules proposed by executive agencies to be approved by Congress in a joint resolution. So what does that mean? That means that all executive branches like the FDA, the USDA, Department of Education, DOD, FEMA, EPA, they have to go through Congress in order to make rules and, you know, establish policy. But the point of government is to administer to the people, and they can't administer to the people if it's constantly being buried under litigation in Congress. Like, how can we administer if we don't help? So ultimately, my question is, sir, is with the disconnect here and the way that you're voting, what is the justification for that? Okay. What justifies you voting against veterans and children?
Thank you, Brian, and thank you for your service. I agree that there's going to be things, there are going to be things that you disagree with my vote. There are. And there is going to be a group of people out in the district that are going to say, thank you for voting that way. There is. That is a...
Yeah, thank you, Steve.
You're right. I'm supposed to vote exactly for you, right? No, that's right. I'm supposed to vote exactly what you want, right? Okay. But you said yes. So what if the person next to you says, that's not the way I want to vote? I appreciate your service, and I'm going to say that yes, there are going to be things that we disagree with. There's no doubt about it. There's also going to be a group of people in the district that is going to say thank you for voting that way. You're right. You're right, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Congressman.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. I was a teacher at this school for 30 years. Some of these are my students. Some of them are students. One of the things I hoped I taught my students was we do respect the office. There were presidents that Republican presidents that I had a real hard time with, but I made my students say president every time. And you are on you and I do not agree on everything, but the majority of people in this district voted for you. If we don't like the way you vote, we can vote somebody else in next time. I do not agree with every way you vote, and that's probably okay because we're two different people. I will vote for you again, probably, unless somebody takes up somebody else. I do want to address one thing that people talk about healthcare, and I do believe that a country as great as ours should have some sort of healthcare for everyone that is here. I don't understand people that are my age or older, 65 or older. We're on Medicare. I'm sorry, I don't pay a dime, and my husband's had 7 heart attacks. We don't pay. The lady said that at 67 and 77, terrible, it's not going to happen because we're on Medicare. A lot of Republicans don't like Medicare. I'm a Republican and I love Medicare. Some of the things that happen in California are different than some of the things that happen in other states. California has handled themselves pretty well as far as health care. Other states have not done as well before the Affordable Care Act. I do appreciate you being here. I really wish that people come here, they would listen to you answer their questions.
Did we get over here? That's okay. Yes, sir. Canyon? Canyon High?
So first of all, I'm not a very good public speaker, so I apologize in advance. But
you're doing good.
My name is Sam Walker. I'm a 7th grade learner at Santa Cruz Valley International Charter School, and I'm aware you voted yes on the American Health Care Act bill, a replacement for the Affordable Health Care Act that will cut Medicaid by approximately $850 million.
He's doing fine. Relax, he's doing fine.
How could you justify, let alone support, something that could ruin millions of lives? 42% of spending goes to people with 42% of Medicaid spending goes to people with mental disabilities or disabilities in general, as well as 21% to children and another 21% to the elderly. And if you cut Medicaid, you will be reversing disability rights and stopping positive change. As a congressman, is that something you want to be known for?
Okay. Good job. Remember, Medicaid was that before. Medicaid was that in the ACA and other things. Medicaid is that in the AHCA, and it continues on. So the disabled will stay under Medicaid, pregnant women, elderly, kids, yes. So it will not change for those groups. Yes, sir.
Hi, Congressman. My name is Ryan Snell. I live and own a business here in your district. And I just wanted to say that when you give the rhetoric that you're standing up for small business, I'm a small business owner, but I'm also a human. And I make my decisions not purely based on my pocketbook, but also looking at what's right and what's not. So clearly the decisions you make and the excuses that you're making for those decisions don't seem to have a whole lot of morals being brought into it. It's purely financial. Everything from the telecom convincing you guys to take away the internet privacy, which is absolutely ridiculous. Let me just say, Google, Yahoo, every company that you named provides a service at no cost. The cost is our privacy, and we can choose to not do business.
You're right. You're right.
With Google, with Facebook. However, we need an ISP. We pay them for that service. That is their payment. Our privacy is not their payment. So I would like to know how you think that is the same, that a paid service is the same as another service that gives us benefits and where we're voluntarily acknowledging that our privacy is the payment for the services they offer.
And I'm not cutting you off. I understand the distinction. I do. That's why going back to the FCC and asking for a decision across the board seems to be the clearest way to do this. And again, if we don't, then a lot of people are not as educated as you or don't know what happens with their information that can be sold. And they don't know that maybe this company does it and this company doesn't. They don't know. Okay. Yes, ma'am.
So Congressman, okay. I think she's got a question. Excuse me, Congressman, so it's your honest opinion that vote was the absolute best way forward to protect your constituents? There's no better alternative.
Well, let me ask you, what would be the alternative? What would be the alternative if we didn't go to the FCC and ask for clarification? What would be the alternative? It's not a law. It is a decision.
Had you done absolutely nothing?
For a decision.
Congressman, had you done?
You're wrong.
Had you done absolutely nothing, and had there been no legislation?
Right. It would stay the same. It would have been a midnight regulation.
Maybe they would know it. Maybe they wouldn't. Okay. But your constituents would be in a better position today.
One of the constituents came to me and said, you know, you knew about this. You knew that they were selling our information, and you knew this was happening, and you never did anything about it. Do you think that that's viable? And I'm only asking you. I know I'm asking 206 people, but I'm only asking you. Is that viable or no?
Every single company that you mentioned has a privacy policy that's agreed to before using that service.
Only
every single one of them.
That is functioning true. Only if you use that. You can go on there, onto the search engines, and your information can be out there, and they can sell that information. So I'm just asking you, as an educated person in this, to have the FCC give us a clarification across the board, why is that bad?
If you use Google and you don't have a Google account, you're some random dot in a billion users on the internet. They don't have your information to collect until you voluntarily.
Sir, if you go on Google right now and you buy a pair of shoes at DSW, guarantee you're going to start hitting these banners that are going to be shoes to sell. Guarantee. You know that's true, right?
It's not, no. That's tied to the machine. You can clear those cookies, and they can't continue to track you the following day.
Again, sir, you're an educated person in this. I'm not trying to get in an argument. You're an educated person.
Well, clearly you're not, and you voted.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, first of all, I do want to thank you for being here because I checked on Friday, and as of Friday, you had nothing scheduled. And I'm lucky enough to get emails that alert me to these things. So thank you for putting them on because I really was losing hope. But what I'd like to ask you, and what I'd like to tell you, is that so this is your job, you set the time, you're here. I took a lot of time to get here. So it's really important to me that when I ask a question, you actually answer it.
We can answer the question, absolutely.
That would be great, because I don't expect you to agree with me on everything, I really don't.
Okay.
But I want you to justify why you do certain things, because you're representing me, and if I understand why you're doing it, I may agree with you. Okay, so it's really important to me. So my question is, this budget that the president has put forth, and I understand that Congress will do all kinds of things with it, if, legislatively he doesn't do this. However, he has put forth a one-page budget. I'm not sure how you do that, but he has. And, it's frightening. It's frightening a lot of people with in a lot of different areas and a lot of different services. So can you tell me what part of it do you agree with? You know, what aspects of it do you agree with specifically and why? And then what parts you don't agree with? Like you said, education is something you didn't agree with.
Okay, good question. So, we've gone through the budget. It's more than one page, but reading through the budget, there are an awful lot of things that I don't agree with. I don't agree with the education cuts. Absolutely. People have talked to me about the National Endowment of the Arts. It's not a small amount of money, but in the grand scheme of things, it's a couple $100 million. It does an awful lot for people like me, like you, like probably everyone else that has grown up with PBS and things like that. So, and I'll go through a couple others here, but the part I do agree with was I think that we should bump up the military. I think that the military should be. I'm going to try and talk to you. At some point, the military, we gave them a raise last year, the biggest raise we've given the military in 6 years. It was 2.1%. That bumps up the mark for the spending for defense, gets us to about the $603 billion range. Please don't quote me on that, but it's pretty close. Then we'd like to see a bump up for training, flight hours, making sure that our men and women, if they are go into, it is difficult. You lose your train of thought when you're talking to somebody and somebody just yells at you. So I'm sorry, but I do lose my train. So there is a bump up to get it to $653 billion. That's a huge bump, but I think there's going to be a negotiation there of where we get to so that we do have flight hours for our men and women and we do train them. There are, and if I grab my notes real quick, there's a cut to NASA that I didn't agree with at all. Go ahead.
A cut to the NIH, a cut to NASA, a cut to school, children's after school.
Yeah, after school program. I put all that
Lunches,
into education.
breakfast, elderly, it just goes on and on.
I know that.
So
I put a lot of those things into education.
I'm sorry, excuse me.
Yes.
What parts of those do you not agree with? Because I get you on the military. I'm with you. I mean, I get that that's important. But not at any cost. It isn't at any cost to me. Nor is that wall. Okay? There's no evidence that freaking wall is going to do anything.
Build that wall! Build that wall!
Children or elderly getting care. So we're having to justify
and I'd be happy to sit down with you. We can look through the budget and we can talk about issues. People do call me all the time and say, please don't. That helps. It does. And to talk to people in the district.
My name is Jill Rosani. You may have a few emails from me. You probably have a few calls from me. My name. I'd love to sit down.
Okay, we're going to have somebody come over and take your name, your information, and we'll get back to you, okay?
Thank you. And which of those do you not agree with, by the way?
To education? Yeah, no, we've already talked about Meals on Wheels. We talked about education cuts. I don't agree with those. No, we already talked about cancer research. We talked about that in the last one. I'm on record on that, saying no. I understand that, but I'm just saying that she's asking me a question. I'm trying to answer, and answer everybody else. Okay, all right. And we'll get your information. Okay. Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry.
Hello, Representative Knight, and I like this. Thank you for the opportunity to address this issue of. I'm concerned mostly with the cuts in Medicare, Medi-Cal, and SSDI.
Yes, ma'am.
I have a son. He's 38. When he was 15, he was diagnosed with schizophrenia. There's 4 different kinds of schizophrenia. He had the one where the person becomes catatonic. He graduated from Canyon High School because of the help that he received here and the fact that he was sent out to a school for a couple of years to get himself back together again. His journey has not been easy, but he did get Medicare, Medi-Cal, and he did get SSDI because he qualified for it. And most people who get SSDI are qualified for it.
Yes.
So after graduation, he decompensated over a period of several years until he was determined to be gravely disabled. Because in our world today, the only way you get help is to be gravely disabled, which nobody wants to get to. We take better care of dogs. He ended up spending 2 years in a locked facility in Pomona. took that long to get him stabilized until he kind of came back into this world. These are brain disorders. We need research on more brain disorder diseases. He is now living in Pasadena. Sometimes he goes to school. And he would like to work. This was all done because of government help. I don't make enough money to pay for that. It would take everything I earn just to pay for the medication he's been put on. Will you comment and commit to maintaining the current levels of Medicaid, Medicare, and SSDI in the upcoming federal budget?
Federal budget, we have talked about Medicare, SSDI, Medicaid, going to have to go back in there, but I think that there was regards in there. Yeah, for the president's budget, understand, I'm answering your question, understand there's going to be an appropriations process that goes through this, and that will be how we spend money, Congress spends the money. Not seeing anything that we would cut any one of those programs moving forward. So, and you've got my commitment. Yes.
Bring this point up too, that the housing that we now have for the seriously mentally ill depend on Medicaid.
No, I agree with you on that quite a bit.
And we have so many people that are out on the streets, and I don't hear anybody talking about that either.
Well, I'm going to defend this community quite a bit because this community steps up a lot on trying to help people that have disabilities, that are homeless, are homeless vets. This community steps up quite a bit, so I will defend this community on a lot of things, but that one they really do a great job. The state has got to step up and the federal government's got to step up on the homeless issues and on the disability issues. Yes. Okay, we'll do a few more. Okay, let's go right. Oh, okay, go ahead. Yes, sir. Okay, yes, sir.
Thank you for hosting the town hall, and I do hope that there are a few more that you have. My concern is, and we've talked about this before,
yes, we have.
you and I don't agree on quite a bit. And there was a 6.7 march, and I understand that you represent who your majority was that voted for you. But you also represent the entire 25th congressional district. Right. My concern, and please nobody talk, Democrat or Republican, I just really want a straight answer and a full answer.
Right.
How do you plan to not only bridge the gap between Democrats and Republicans, because there is a divide between us, and I understand you're doing town halls and all this, but as a congressman, how is it that, I'm a Democrat, you're a Republican, how can we work together? And we've met. At a protest, but we met. You did? Yes, you did. So, I want to know how is it that we can work together, and also as the person who, as the president of the Santa Cruz Valley Young Democrats, I work with a group of people who feel, you can say millennials or the tech gen, who don't get a voice in politics. But the reality is we're a very big generation, and they're going to be in voting block soon. So how can we bridge the gap, work together as Democrats and Republicans where we can reach quite a few things, and also how can we start having young people have a voice in politics?
Okay, so good questions, and I appreciate the time you've We will meet anytime, and you know that, and I love to meet with groups that might not agree with me, might not ever support me. That's great, because you're going to bring a different view, I'm going to bring a different view, and hopefully we're going to get to a place where we can put in legislation that we both agree with. Every piece of my legislation has Democrat co-sponsors, everyone across the board, and so I do try and reach across the aisle and say, hey, look, this is an idea that is not a Republican idea, it's not a Democrat idea, we're just trying to make sure that we don't have a line in Santa Cruz. So, how about this? Give all your information to Lisa. You get your group together, or many groups. We are trying to meet with small groups because the town halls are great, and I do enjoy them. Even though they get a little But they are hard to set up and all of that where I meet with people from 8 o'clock till 6 o'clock, when I'm home. And those are great little meetings. They are, whether they're 5 people or 20 people. And I ask you all that. Anybody who wants to do that, reach out to me. And trust me, there's a lot of things that you and I agree on. There are. So if we write legislation that we both agree on, that's a great thing, right? Go with the spirit. Okay. All right.
Congressman, we have a question up here at the top.
Okay. Yes.
As a veteran, I get my health care at the VA, West LA VA.
Thank you.
It is my understanding that the Secretary of the VA said that the West LA VA is on a list for possible closure.
I'm going to ask you a question. Where'd you hear that?
That was yesterday.
Okay, where?
I believe it was online in one of the papers.
Okay. Okay.
But I also believe that it was elsewhere on TV.
Okay. We're going to get back to you. I haven't heard this before, and West LA, remember, we've got one of the largest veteran communities.
I understand.
In a 100-mile radius from here.
That's right.
And West LA is our big facility.
Yes.
I have not heard that, but I want to get back to you, so we will directly talk to the secretary and ask him where this is coming from and what the heck's going on. Because that's the first time I've heard it.
On the list.
Okay.
And also, if that happens, what will you do with
for
the veterans in the high desert and
first,
here?
we absolutely would fight tooth and nail to keep West LA open. I mean, West LA is all about we have some care here in Southern California, but it doesn't quite blanket our veterans. So closing one is
we had 3 VA hospitals. We are down to 1.
yeah.
And
Ma'am,
we
will get back to you within 24 hours. And we'll put that on our website if that is any regard true or any regard not true. We will put that on our website by the end of business tomorrow. Yep, we're going to get her and then we'll go right down here.
Thank you, Congressman. My name is Mary Sullivan, and I've been spending days trolling through trying to see exactly where you stand and where you voted. And HR 1761, which is for some reason named Protection of Minors, bill that just passed on May 24th that you voted for. After someone with half of a brain and probably a lot of you actually read the whole thing without rubber stamping it, saw that there was it's supposed to protect children that are used for the sex trade or for pornography.
Yeah, the sex trafficking.
And make it a harder punishments and stuff for them. But someone read it and said, wait a minute, legally you have not differentiated between the bad guys and the babies that are being rounded up in these things. And so one of the Democrats, I forget which name, entered amendment number 283, which would legally make it so that it was clear that there's bad guys and then there's children who are not going to be held to the same fine from, I'm sure you're not going to put a 5-year-old in prison, but those children, because you voted against the amendment that would hold the children to a separate degree, those children, even a 5-year-old, would have a sex offender on their record for the rest of their life. They're not a prostitute, they're a victim. Why did you vote against the amendment?
1761, ma'am?
1761 was protection of children, and 283 would have legally made it clear that the children are not to be punished along with the bad guys. Why did you vote against it? Did you not read it? Please explain to these people what the difference is, why you voted against that amendment.
And I can't remember every word of the amendment or what that happened. Congresswoman Wagner wrote that piece of legislation, I'm pretty sure. on trying to make sure that sex trafficking has a harder bite against the person that we are trying to get. That is the person that is the John, or the person that is selling the young person or indenturing them. That is what we are trying to do. We have had sex trafficking roundtables here in this community. And so I think you know where my commitment is. And also as a police officer, you know, a lot of things have changed over the last 15 years where a young lady who might have been put into the sex trade, I don't want to call it industry, but criminal activity, for a while, that young lady was treated as a criminal. And that has changed over the years. It's changed in the law enforcement community, it's changed in the criminal courts community, and I think that that's been accepted that this is the victim, this is not a criminal.
Except with 1761, the amendment that would have made that clear legally that the children cannot be held accountable with the Johns. You voted down that amendment that would have saved the children, made it clear, not left it up to the local law enforcement to decide.
Okay, we're going to get your answer on that. Because I don't have.
You just voted on it on May 24th.
I understand. I understand. But I do want to read it again. Ma'am, just because I voted on something doesn't mean I'm backing away from it. It just means I want to get that information in front of me when we talk. That's fair. That's fair in court. Okay, so I'm just asking for that. We will pull that up. We'll pull the amendment up. We'll talk to you about that. Absolutely. But you have my commitment that whether the young lady or the young boy being indentured into slave trafficking is a victim. It is not the suspect. So.
That law you passed, they can have a sex offender on their record for the rest of their life.
Okay.
That's not right.
Yes, sir. Oh, right here.
Hi, thanks. Thanks for taking my question. Jack Burke from the Board of just a quick aside, I'd like to point out to the gentleman who spoke earlier. I'm a Vietnam vet.
Thank you.
Serving my country. I think I have just as much. I think I have perhaps more respect for the office of the presidency than the current incumbent. I don't take offense. I'd like to express an opinion against you, so that's hiding the opinion. I grew up in a time, I came to adulthood and lived through a time where there was increasing disrespect and distrust from government at all levels. That's become worse and worse as I've grown older. Right now today, I have a government that lies to me. I have government officials who lie under penalty of perjury at their confirmation hearings. It's not close. Democrats have lied at their confirmation hearings. We need to get past, we need honesty in government, and we need to root out dishonesty wherever it appears. Right now, the dishonesty seems to be predominantly one way or the other, but I'm not interested in that. We need to get back to having the government respect us. And that's just not happening. The government treats us like fools. The government plays a bunch of smoke and mirror games. And with all due respect, what the young lady said about the fiduciary rule, what she said is true. That the fiduciary rule was fought tooth and nail by the fiduciary industry because they didn't like the idea they had to put the interests of the people they advise ahead of their own pocket. That's the point. When and how is the federal government, including yourself and everybody else, when are the elected officials going to start being candid with us and not talking to us like fools?
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. I agree. I think that it is very divisive right now. I think it's divisive not one way or the other, one party or the other. I think it's divisive going two ways. It is. And I like to get back to working on the people's business and doing that instead of all of the rigmarole and garbage that goes on a daily basis that really a lot of us don't think is helpful, right? So That is my commitment. That I told a young person over here that our 3 commitments have been the same for the last 3 years that I've been in Congress. That we work on those aeronautics, we work on veterans, and we work on small business. And maybe you disagree with some of the things that I do. Okay. But the issue is we are still working on those 3 issues and trying to advance those 3 issues so that we can create more opportunities. There's more ability to have expansion of businesses, whether it be small or a large business, and making sure our veteran care. So as a veteran, I can tell you, I spoke in front of 50 veterans yesterday. I'm going to take just a little leeway here. We passed a bunch of veteran bills recently. We passed 8 of them. And I asked veterans yesterday, how's the VA? These veterans were all Vietnam vets, Korean vets, all between probably 58 and about 88. Almost every one of them said the VA is getting better. I'm getting better care. That's right. And, okay, so another vet saying it's pretty cool. So it's making a turn. Remember, for about 35 years, the VA was great, and veterans said that's the best care anywhere. And then it started to drop off because the administration lost their way. It wasn't the doctors or the nurses or the clinicians. It was the administration at the VA that lost their way. Okay. Well, and we can help you with that if there is an issue with that. And if there's a veteran that cannot get their records or cannot get their DD-214 or something like that, Chris Ward is right over there, and she's the best caseworker in the business on VA. So it is making a turn, and that makes me happy that the VA is getting better. And so those things we agree with, and those things we can work on. And if we can calm down some of the garbage that goes on, we can work and we can get some things done, and success breeds success. So, okay, one more. Yeah. Okay. Let's do over here because this has been a real. I'm already in front of the black shirt, or in the middle of the black shirt. Okay, you know what? Let's go to the young lady in the red jacket because she's been
Valencia, California.
Valencia.
I believe we are witnessing the collapse of our democracy, of our economy, and of our environment. I think the time is dire and it is an emergency. And I think we have to look about how we got here in order to turn it around. In 1970, the Supreme Court, Lewis Powell was appointed to the Supreme Court. He was a tobacco lobbyist and attorney. He was the one who navigated the Supreme Court to the money equals speech decision. That was the beginning of the end. FDR had reined in corporate power, and the wealthy regulated them, taxed them, and created a safety net for the people. To turn it around, and it took them from the 70s until now, where we have the biggest crook, liar, and thief. The Republicans, the willing
all, thank you for ending it on a boom. I guess we saved you for the last, right? Because we knew it was going to be so. Thank you all for coming, and okay, ma'am, I'm sorry, I didn't hear a question, but okay. So if we want to get money out of politics, I think that was the crux of where you were going. That people want to get corporate money out. People also want to get union money out of politics, correct? No, they don't want to do it. Okay. So if we get if we are going to get corporate money and union money out, I think that it would come down to the individual putting money. Okay, we're good. Yes, ma'am. Absolutely. Okay. Absolutely, I am. Yes, ma'am. I am. Okay, thank you all very much.